Refurbs can make or break your rent-to-rent deals, and the fact is most of you are doing them wrong. You overspend, overthink, and worse still, a refurb that should have took just a few days takes weeks and weeks and weeks whilst you're forking out the rent. Nightmare. But done right, a rent-to-rent refurb can supercharge your cash flow, slash your voids, and attract premium tenants time and time again. In this video, I'm going to share the exact blueprint that my mentees have used to secure over 1,000 rent-to-rent deals and get them cash flowing from day one. But here's the thing, you only get one shot with your rent-to-rent refurb. So watch this video to make sure you get it right. One of the biggest advantages of rent-to-rent is the time in which it takes you to get your initial investment out. So buy-to-let, on average, if you're putting £100,000 into a property, if you make £1,000 a month, you probably don't, it would take you 100 months or almost a decade to get your initial investment out. In rent-to-rent, we want to get our money out in as little as 3 to 6 months. So let's take a timeline for your average rent-to-rent deal. So what we find is most people, this is what most people do, all right? Most people take a property on, they start paying rent from day 0, okay? This is when they pay their first rent. And then if it takes you, I don't know, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to actually generate an income, do the refurb, what's happening is you're basically dropping money every single week. Now, if you've got a property in an affluent area, you could already be a few £1,000s down, plus the renovation, plus the rent or deposit, whatever it is, before you even start generating income. We don't want to do that. In Rent-to-Rent 2.0, what we're really trying to do is to try and make that process as smooth as possible. So what I highly recommend is you want to agree on a preparation period. In other words, this means that for the first 14 days, sometimes 21, sometimes I've had a 6-week rent-free period. What happens is we just use that time to prepare the property. Now, the beautiful thing about this is not only do we use this opportunity to prepare the property, but we also start generating marketing. So that means all our listings and advertisings and viewings, if you're doing HMO, can start to be conducted during this 14 days. So what I often find is I'm generating income during this period. So by the time I get to day, okay, let's call this just day 0, I am now in a position where I could generate income from day 1, which means, this is what it means, guys. It means those first 30 days, on average, 90% of the time, I am at least making a few £100, if not more. That is month 1, which means my return on investment, or my ROI, starts from day 1. 90% of the time, I'm actually already making a few £100s. Then what happens is by the time I hit month 2, okay, this is my next 30 days, I'm expecting a beautiful positive cash flow. This is usually where I'm hitting my 1K a month, 2K a month, sometimes even more depending on the property. Now, buy to let, guys, you could be waiting to complete on the property for 6 months. So to be able to pick up the keys on day -14 and to be able to be generating income all within 60 days is a game changer, and it's what I love about rent-to-rent. So now you know the ideal ramp for a rent-to-rent deal. Let's talk about how long should it take for you to get all of your initial investment out of the property. Now, once you've got all of your money out, we call this an infinite return, because now you're just collecting cash for free. And in a rent-to-rent deal, on average, we are looking to get, guys, 60 months of cash flow, which is absolutely beautiful, because my average rent-to-rent deal is 60 months or 5 years, right? So in other words, the landlord's going to give you that property and say, hey, this is your property for the next 5 years. So in terms of breaking even, a lot of people get this wrong. And I see a load of people, they take a good 12 months before they are in positive cash flow on a rent-to-rent deal. Okay? Now, let's be honest with you. You still have all of this period to enjoy your profit, but why not bring that right back? Because when I do a rent-to-rent deal, I am ideally looking to break even within, my favorite is within 3 months. That basically means after 90 days, I'm generating a profit. So if I've invested £4,000, okay, at the 90-day point, I want to have received that 4K, which means everything after that is profit. But at very worst case scenario, my rule, I never ever take a deal on unless I break even within the 6 months, because then that means after 6 months, all my money is out and I now have all of this period to profit and benefit from that cash flow. Now, deal sources. One of the things I dislike about deal sources is whenever you use a deal sourcer, what tends to happen is your break-even point is going to go 12 months, if not even longer, because of all the fees associated with working with a deal sourcer. So in an ideal scenario, team, we want to do this ourselves. That's going to mean that by the time we get to here, certainly here, we are in a profit. In Rent-to-Rent 2.0, when we look at the return on investment, we approach it in a bit of a different way to traditional rent-to-rent. The reason is, I realized some years ago, hang on a minute, some of the investment that I invest in the property is not lost, okay? Furniture, some of my appliances, they are company assets. So in terms of worst case scenario, if the deal doesn't work, I can always sell those. So when I define my return on investment and when I look at it, this is how I approach it. First things first, there are 2 different types of investments when we talk about a rent-to-rent refurb, rent-to-rent deal. The first is property investments. These are the things that you will never ever get back. I'm talking about carpets, fitted blinds. If you paint and decorate the property, you can't pull the paint off the wall. So these investments are fixed and you will never get them back. However, the second type of investment is company assets. All right, this is things like TVs, appliances, furniture. These are all things that worst case scenario, we can actually liquidize. We can take them out of the property and all is not lost. So when I look at my return on investment, my break-even point, break-even equals property investment plus the asset investment, okay? That equals your total investment. And then all we have to do is I almost forgot my own formula. So a lot of people will just add the property and the assets and give you the total investment. But that's incorrect because, as I said, these assets we can liquidize. So what I like to do is I count 100% of the property investments and only 50% of the assets, because I know if a property didn't work and I decided to exit, I could actually take these assets and either reuse them in my next deal or sell them for 50%. So let's use an example. Let's say you spend £3,000 on the property. You spend £2,000 on assets, the furniture. That would mean your total investment is 5K. However, we're only going to take into account 50% of this, which means in reality, the break-even figure we're looking for is £4,000. So let's just look at how that would work. If you go back to my last model, if we was able to make a few £100 in month 1, then by month 2 was generating 1,500 quid per month, all we would do then is divide this 4K by 1,500 quid to work out the break-even point, and you're going to see you're in between 2 and 3 months to break even. That's what we're looking for. If you're enjoying this content, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, comment below with any questions. I personally will answer all your questions, okay, and help you any way that I can. So back to the video, back to the content. What I'm going to show you right now is an absolute game changer, because traditional rent to rent says you should focus on motivated landlords, tired properties. And a lot of traditional rent to renters, I find, they end up with the bottom rungers, the bottom of the market properties, which, to be quite frank, just don't generate the best income. What I do differently is I position myself as an expert. I build the branding. I build an image so that I can attract the premium quality properties, because they're the ones that get the premium cash flow. So here's the thing, right? If you imagine two circles like this, what I often find is you get the properties over here which they're super tired. Super tired, right? These properties are the properties that we ideally want to avoid. Why? Because what you're going to find is you're going to have more maintenance issues. You're going to have to spend more money getting the properties prepared. You're going to have more complaints and bad reviews from tenants and guests that just don't really feel the property is great, and they're just a bit more of a headache. Then on the other hand, we have properties over here, which, let's call them modern. Okay, these are the modern, fresh, gorgeous, premium properties that when you're starting are going to be harder to secure because there's more competition. The landlord could rent them any day of the week over the asking price. There's a waiting list. There's a line queuing up to take properties on like this. So they can be harder to get at the beginning, but this is what we want to work towards. This is all I get today. But when I started, I realized that here, these properties, I had the opportunity to add massive value and get a few of these sort of over the line. But what I realized is this little part in the middle. This is what we really want in Rent to Rent 2.0. They're not tired enough to be really hard work, really bad maintenance, really high investments. Okay, they're not that tired, but they're not modern enough to be the top premium properties, which are really hard to achieve. Now, when it comes to this green section, there's a few things that you need to watch out for, and I want to share that with you next. So how do you find those ideal properties that are a perfect balance? Well, let's take a property. Let's take this property right now. Okay, now here are the key things, all right? We're going to focus on 4 key rooms here. Now, number 1, the kitchen. The kitchen needs to be on the more modern side. I'm talking about solid kitchen cabinets. I'm talking about ideally good appliances, okay? Good cooker, ideally integrated, or at least, I hate it when you've just got a random cooker that's separate from the whole kitchen. So ideally, we're looking for kitchens which are as modern as possible. Also, a key thing to look out for, make sure you do this, is always look inside the kitchen cupboards, because sometimes they look great from the outside. Then you go in, they're sticky, they're grotty, and it can be a really big job to turn a kitchen round. So on a kitchen, we really want to be looking for more modern. The second room, which is really, really key here, is B for bathrooms. I really, really need more modern bathrooms. Why? Because they're the most expensive rooms, kitchen and bathroom, to turn around. And what you never want to do, I've never done this, I've never put a new bathroom in a rent to rent. I've never put a new kitchen in rent to rent. The most I've ever done is maybe I've sometimes replaced a few cupboards, or I've sometimes laminated kitchen cabinets. Bit of a nightmare, to be honest with you. And in the bathroom, the most I've ever done is maybe put a screen up, maybe change a mirror, maybe the flooring. But we're looking for these 2 things to be as modern as possible. Now, when it comes to a lounge, a little bit more flexibility here, all right? Because a lounge is pretty much good carpet or flooring, nice lick of paint, and you're pretty much good to go. So it's really, really easy to make a lounge look amazing without having to invest that much in it, all right? So I'm happy for the lounge to be a little bit less quality. I'm cool with that because I know I can get it to where I need to, which is gonna be good, and it's not gonna take much money. And the same goes for bedrooms. Okay, bedrooms, all we need is a new carpet. We need some painting and decorating, which, by the way, the landlord will often fund, but I can make this room look amazing for probably 500, 600, 700 quid. And it will make a huge difference. My first ever rent-to-rent deal, I replaced the carpets, I painted and decorated the place, and the landlord actually, what they did for me was they gave me, I think it was £250 off for the first year, which was £3,000 to offset my expenditure on that. But to summarize, kitchen, bathrooms in rent-to-rents, gotta be good. Bedrooms, lounges, dining rooms, as long as you've got the potential to paint and decorate, do the flooring, maybe get the landlord to do something like this, that is how you're going to create that green middle ground that we're looking for in Rent-to-Rent 2.0. If you're really, really smart, you shouldn't be paying for much of this cosmetic stuff. Why? Because the landlord would have likely had to have done this anyway. I've got a video dedicated to closing deals on the lowest investment, and my lowest ever investment, all I did was spend 250 quid for a 7-bed, 4-bathroom, all singing, all dancing. It was already furnished HMO. So you can really get these deals down to really low investments if you know what you're doing. Now, I want to share with you a model that I always use, okay? I always use and I always give it to my mentees just to help keep them on track. And I find that if you focus on these 3 things, you can't go far wrong. Now, the foundation that we've not actually touched on yet is you've got to start with the tenant in mind. Because a lot of people, they get so focused on what they like, their taste, okay, what they think that they would enjoy, what they think they should spend, that they completely neglect the tenant. Let me give you an example. If you are going for contractors and you're looking to do budget accommodation, it is absolutely pointless you put in expensive appliances, expensive, really thick carpets, super expensive TVs and furniture and mattresses. They don't care, all right? So you need to make sure that you focus on the tenant. Now, once you've got the tenant dialed in, then I recommend you want to keep your eye on the budget. So as I've showed you earlier, in terms of the return on investment models, when you actually put all this together, you can say, well, I'm going for high-end tourism. Therefore, my budget is X, and therefore, that's going to inform every single decision that you make. So once again, if you know that you're going for high quality luxury service accommodation, you might be able to make £4,000 per month profit, guys, from one deal. That would not be unordinary for you to do that. So if you're making £4,000 a month, technically within my 3 to 6 month sort of plan, you could spend up to £20,000 if you so chose. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but you could. And then the final thing, this is the final mistake I see people making, but it's so important, especially if you're brand new and this is your first experience at property renovation, you need to make sure that you always get the balance between speed and quality. Because if you do not start correctly in terms of the speed of this refurb, it's going to be an uphill struggle. And I see so many brand new rent-to-renters, it's going to knock your confidence a little bit if you can see the 2nd month of rent is due and you've still not completed the refurb. So you need to make sure that you're as fast as possible. But top tip, and I've learned this the hard way, be really careful. Be really careful about cutting corners. Because if you sign this property for 5 years, this is going to be the only chance you get to get this refurb right, to get the photography right, to have a clear run with no tenants or guests so you can really do this. Also, if you're a year in and you ask the landlord for a contribution, he's way less likely to oblige. So do it at the beginning, get this stuff right. And this is how you're going to maximize your end-to-end refurb, increase your income, and avoid those terrible voids. Hit this link right now to find out how to market your rent-to-rent business to attract the highest quality modern properties.